Explore the history, relationships, expertise, and data that go into ensuring Stine growers get maximum yield potential. This is the Stine Seedcast. Here's your host, David Thompson.
Hello, and welcome to the Stine Seedcast. I'm your host, David Thompson, National Marketing and Sales Director for Stine Seed Company. We've got another great episode lined up with special guests, expert insights, and discussion on everything you need to know about maximizing yield potential. On today's episode, our special guest is Myron Stine, president of Stine Seed Company. Welcome, Myron.
Thank you, David.
Myron's joining us today to discuss what we at Stine believe is going to be a big leap forward, MX Series corn by Stine. Myron's going to talk to us about the origins of the new MX Series corn, the features and benefits of these hybrids, and how growers can access these exclusive products for the 2023 season. Well, first off, Myron, welcome back. I think we haven't had you since summer, episode 10, I think it was, last time you were on here.
That could be. I have been counting the days. I'm very happy to be here, though.
Good. Well, so we're talking about MX corn today. Exciting project for Stine Seed Company. So I guess to lay the groundwork, tell us what exactly we're talking about when we talk about MX Series corn by Stine.
So as everyone knows, we have a corn breeding program. And in that program, we have some very different material relative to what the rest of the industry is offering. And we thought it was important for us to emphasize that in our corn lineup and have that different than just our regular corn lineup. So we are now today taking the newest material out of our program, which gives us an example of material that's the future of the corn hybrid. It typically is shorter in stature. It has very good ear placement along with that short stature size. And we would consider these plants more efficient in higher management. And so in the Stine MX series, all this material is going in there, and we're able to then go to the proper growers that are able to take that material and make that material bring more yield to their farm and bring more profitability.
So, obviously the Stine brand's been around for a long time, and talk to me a little about the decision to, like you said, separate those out as this MX lineup. I think is an interesting approach to really draw attention to the different product that you have offering here in the lineup.
Yeah, so today the MX lineup is exclusively our genetics. So it has our female and it has our male on it. And really what happened was we have a number of really heavy hitter hybrids, but we were able to go into those genetics and make them even better. And so we made them stand better, we made them yield more. And then the real big thing we did was, as far as the integration of the actual insect trait, the insect trait does not produce any type of yield drag to those genetics within these MX hybrids. And that was a big thing because I think the industry has a difficult time doing that. And we've successfully taken these genetics and they're expressing these insect traits and not having yield drag. They're actually yielding with no pressure, with no insect pressure, with our straight conventional material and our glyphosate material. So that was a big deal. So all in all, the MX series is going to represent the newest and best genetics out of our program.
So talk a little bit about that. I mean, trait integration is kind of an interesting thing, and I know there's a couple different things that happen there. You can have, sort of yield drag, which is something that's inherent in the plant itself, and then you have, I think we commonly refer to as yield lag, which is just the time it takes to get genetics bred up at the speed that you want to start achieving yield increase, right? So with these hybrids, we're seeing these genetics with insect traits, and they really, even in the absence of insects, we're not seeing any sort of differential in yield.
So on that topic, David, regarding the actual introduction or putting this trait into the genetics, what we do is we have a number of different conversions within the inbred lines. And so we do, thousands of those, and then we have to pick within those different conversions the best performing one. And that takes a lot of work. And so we've done a very good job within the MX lineup of picking the right inbred lines, and it's taken us some time frankly, because some of the genetics that we have in the MX series are very well known. They're like 9714, 9709. Those are two of the dominant products in that lineup. And so we've just gone in there and made them better.
So when you talk about going in there and making them better, I mean, and you talked a little bit about a selection process. So is that simply a process of looking at those conversions and finding those lines that provide the best return?
Well, it's looking at them through a yield screening program and figuring out which ones yield more and then which ones stand better. Those are the two main criteria. Then you go from there. You look at disease packages and so on and so forth.
So that's the process that was gone through to create products like MX709 or MX514 and things
Correct.
like that.
Right.
Okay. Speaking of products, so how many how many lines of MX corn do we have for 2023 that we're offering?
We have 9 different hybrids, and some of those are just glyphosate tolerant. Many of those have double above ground insect protection.
Okay. So ranging from just straight glyphosate corn to insect traded corn.
Correct.
Okay. Any favorites in that?
When I look at what we're offering today, there's 3 that stick out that I like a lot. One is MX 442-20. That's about 101 day. And I like that a lot because the industry doesn't have a lot of new 100-day, 101, 98, 99-day material. So that is so wonderful to see that come out of the program. It's performed extremely well when it comes down to weather conditions this year. In the areas we sold it in, they had some mini derechos, and that hybrid stands and the other competitors don't. Then another hybrid is MX 514-20. That's a new version of 9714. And slightly earlier in maturity, stands very, very well, yields very, very well. The trait does not create any yield drag at all. And then the last one that I'm really high on is MX 709-20. And MX 709-20 out of all of them is probably the most versatile that we have. It's about 109 to 111 day. Can be used in a lot of different soil types and really covers much of the corn belt within the United States.
And you mentioned that these are all sort of based on a new line of genetics that are coming out of our program. What would be some of the characteristics, the typical characteristics that you find in the MX line that are products that are coming through and getting that designation?
So they would represent the future of corn hybrids. They would typically be shorter in stature, but not necessarily always. However, our material generally is shorter than the rest of the industry. They have very good ear placement for their height, and that can be a downfall to some short-statured corn, not ours. And because they're the future of the corn hybrid, they really are, it's material that's more efficient. So you have less above-ground biomass, typically have smaller tassels. The plants are doing a better job of light interception with more upright leaves at the top, things of that nature.
You mentioned kind of how this MX line came into fruition. Was there any radical change in how the breeding program was bringing products forward, or was this just like, seeing these products come out and realizing that this is a real step change and we want to approach this differently than we had in the past?
No, the big thing, there's been no change in the breeding program, but the big thing is that we've recognized that a number of these higher management hybrids really take an early adopter as far as a customer that's understanding that they need more plants per acre, they need more nitrogen, they need sulfur with their nitrogen, they need preferably multiple applications of nitrogen, they need multiple applications of fungicide because typically more population is needed to make these hybrids work. And believe it or not, it's difficult to find a large market that has interest in that. There's a smaller market. So we think it's very important that we focus on these MX lines, segregate them from the rest of our corn lineup. Even within our representatives, they have to go through special training to sell these hybrids. They have to work with their customers to assure the customer is planting it properly. So really the whole MX approach is just being focused on these new genetics that are different than what everybody else has in making sure they're used properly so our customers are getting a better return.
And you brought up something there I think is important to note. Our approach is that the products, I think, are not necessarily just available to everybody. There's certain criteria that have to be met because, again, they are specialized management products, high return, but it's a systems approach, right?
Absolutely. It's not only do we have limited representatives that actually sell these products, but we also have a limited supply.
So looking at MX Corn, so this is our second year now with this MX series. So we just got it launched last year. I guess your initial thoughts on, how that project's going and where you see that going in the future.
Our sales were higher than we originally anticipated. There is a premium on these products. So that, as far as that part of everything, that worked out quite well. We just did a survey on MX products with our customers to understand what their experience has been so far. And it's been above average. But frankly, we just haven't had enough exposure. When the combines go this fall, this will tell us a lot. And of course, we're expecting to have quite a few wins, and you'll have a couple cases where you don't win. That's normal. But what we're looking for is our customer on average to have a very good experience with these. And at the end of the day, we're looking for a customer that's maximizing the return on their acre and maximizing their net profit.
And you kind of said it a little earlier, but to recap, as far as, if you're talking to a grower, because I know you get out in the country, you talk to a lot of different farmers, how do you position and explain, the MX series lineup to them so they understand what that's all about?
Well, we talk to the grower. We make sure they understand if they're going to use this material, they have to look at higher populations. They have to look at more management. If they're unwilling to do that, we have a number of other products in our lineup that would fit their farm much better. So that's the first thing you do. But interestingly enough, typically growers have interest in looking at it. I mean, they at least talk about it and look at it. And when you get done, maybe you find out it's not for their farm, but they have interest, and that's good. And I think if they don't have interest, or if they weren't looking at it, I don't think it would be the future of corn, right? And they know it is. And so they're wanting to learn more about it.
So going forward, what do you see as plans for our MX series initiative, this whole concept continuing?
Yeah, you'll see more products, a wider maturity. Right now we're about 95 day to 113 day or so. And you'll see we'll get a few more later products, we'll get a few more earlier products. Yeah, you'll see that lineup get refined, and we'll learn more. The one thing I know is from talking to all the different growers I've talked to throughout the Midwest, there's not one farmer that has the same practices. So every farmer out there does something different on their farm to get their crop to do what it does. And so you're always learning. You're always learning things and learning what helps and what doesn't help and so on and so forth.
And among those growers that you've had a chance to visit with, I mean, when you kind of explain this concept and what MX series corn represents, they get it. I mean, they understand what we're trying to do and work makes sense for them.
Yeah, they most of them like it a lot. Like I said, everybody has interest in it, but you really need to sit down with that grower and understand, okay, I know you have interest in it, but are you willing? Are you willing to manage this hybrid the way it needs to be managed? It's not the path of least resistance. The path of least resistance are some other products we have that you can just slap out there and they do what they do. This corn really needs that grower that's unique and that early adopter that's willing to do higher management of corn.
You say higher management, and then it occurs to me, so of the products that we have for 2023, is increased population a common thread that runs through all of them? Is that kind of an approach that's standard?
Yes. With the MX lineup,
yeah,
higher populations are needed.
Yep. So they share that kind of characteristic.
And they're not all, some, for instance, in 30-inch rows, in some areas of the country, you need a finished population of 39,000. Now, some don't need that much. So it is different from hybrid to hybrid. But in general, you will find that all of them need higher population than your regular standard older style hybrid.
Well, and that's a good point, because that's something we talk about a lot as we've talked over the years about increasing population, is that finished population number is relative, right? Depending on where you're at. If you're in central Illinois or if you're in the plains of Kansas, the number is different. And so I know we tend to talk about that in terms of percentages, right? Percent over whatever you consider the normal population. And that's probably a more representative way to approach that.
Right, yeah. Typically you say 10 to 15% higher, somewhere in there. And you're right. And it's interesting, in some of the lower producing areas where their populations are typically lower, they can take these products and bump them up 10 to 15%, and they typically see a larger gain than somebody that's already tapping things out in central Illinois, for instance. Because you can go to central Illinois and they're getting very, very high yields and they can have higher populations, but sometimes they find out there's some other variable holding them back from getting that corn crop to go to that 300 bushel level, or whatever their target is.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think even if you're not going to be in the upper 30,000s or whatever for finished population, one of the other things that we have tended to see about high population corn is, by nature, high population corn is good stress corn, because in a sense, that's what you're doing when you create increased population, right? You add some degree of stress. So as we test these hybrids, they seem to come through the program. Those that we consider to be high pop also seem to be good at handling stress, and stress is something we also see in those characteristically low population areas too, right?
Yeah, that's right. The reality is, if you look at our breeding program, we are stressing genetics because we have different population ranges we put them in. Some of them are very high. If they're performing in those higher populations, that's performing under more stress.
So we talked about some of the, what I call physical characteristics that we talked about, the defined MX series corn, the plant architecture, and what that represents. Are there other features that we kind of define MX series corn by?
Yeah. A big one would be seed quality. Our vision is for MX corn to represent the highest seed quality that's out there. And we're willing as a company to do a lot of extra things to assure that, which some companies will not do. And so we did that this year, and it really showed up. It really showed up on some comparisons we did to the MX product relative to the competition. And some growers, our quality is good with our regular Stine material, and some growers may say, well, it's good enough, but we really want it to be the best. And when you get that quality to be the best, another thing that comes with that is uniform size in the bag, and then the ability for the planter to have good singulation. So something else that we do is every single lot of MX corn we run to a planter stand, and we give recommendations on how to set the planters so they have the optimum singulation with the corn.
So that's really aimed at helping that grower place that product in the right way when they get to the field for the best chance of success.
Right, because you have some people using 30-inch rows still, and when you're raising your populations up, it's important to have good spacing within that 30-inch row so your plants aren't getting too close together.
And we've talked about it, I think, in past episodes. Obviously, a lot of people still in 30-inch rows. What do we consider high population in 30-inch rows, from a practical standpoint?
High 30s is the maximum you should go in 30-inch rows.
Because within the row, you're starting to crowd those plants closer and closer together.
Right. The rule of thumb is if you're closer than 4 inches, you're beginning to get them too close together, and then you're beginning to hurt yield when you do that.
So with these MX lines, if a grower wants to know more about MX corn by Stine, where would you advise them to find out more information?
Well, the easiest thing is to go to stineseed.com. There's a lot of information about them. We have some blogs about them. We do have some videos with some particular growers that are using that have management practices that are well adapted towards the MX corn lineup.
Well, we've been visiting today with Myron Stine, president of Stine Seed Company, discussing new MX Series corn by Stine. Myron, thanks so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you, David. It was a pleasure.
Well, that's our time for today. I want to thank our guests and listeners for joining us on another episode of the Stine Seedcast. We'll be back again soon with more expert interviews and insights about all things Stine. And to never miss an episode, subscribe to the Stine Seedcast wherever podcasts are found.
Subscribe to the Stine Seedcast wherever podcasts are found. To learn more about Stine and its elite corn and soybean genetics, visit stineseed.com. Stine has yield.